Well, thank you very much for joining us on the news review. Here we go. As we get into the papers, we'll be joined shortly by Sulemana Abraima, Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa. He actually is with us on this conversation. Mr. Abraima, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation, sir.
Good morning to you, Ben, and thank you for having me.
Great. Let's take a look at the following, even before we get into the newspapers. The newspapers talk about some of these matters already, but let's take a look at the recent SHRAJ, Ghana Statistical Service, UNODC report. I know you've seen it. What is your take? I'm going back to it. Of course, it's still relevant, very relevant, and I've not had a discussion with you on it. So what is your quick reflection on what it evinces? Somewhat 80+% of Ghanaians, involved in bribery and corruption, the educated looking like the most corrupt public officials, very corrupt, the Ghana Police Service in there. There are different dynamics when it comes to those who actually are engaging in it, and then how much is received in terms of sums, the risk and all of that. So what is your quick reflection on that?
Well, I think it's basically a report highlighting something that we all know in terms of corruption as a phenomenon that has actually become normalized. I think for many people in our country today, what is known as corruption is something that is normal. You go to places and you would have to part with money before service is granted. You need a contract and you have to agree to a padded figure to get a contract. Almost everywhere, corruption has become the norm. And I share in the conviction that until we get a leader who is truly and honestly committed to the fight against corruption, this thing would continue. Our architecture in terms of governance and administration is such that, as we always say, the president has enormous powers and basically controls everything. And so if you have a president who comes in and is truly and honestly committed to fighting corruption, and it starts with him or her in terms of what happens at the presidency, what ministers are able to do or are unable to do, what CEOs are allowed or disallowed to do, to a large extent will then influence what happens at the bottom in terms of what is often referred to as petty corruption. People talk about the police, and I share the view that COP Kofi Boakye has always put out, that it is one thing counting the number of incidents and another thing counting the quantum. So you may find 100 police officers, directing traffic and, traffic enforcement officers, and maybe people will part away with some 10 cedis, 20 cedis, maximum 50 cedis to all the 100 people. So if you are counting, you would say, wow, 100 police officers have received bribe. But all that put together may be just about 1,000 Ghana cedis. But in one contract, a minister is going away with some 500 or 1 million Ghana cedis, or a CEO is going away with some $1 million or $500,000. So sometimes when we say the police or the immigration officers are the most corrupt, we are talking about perhaps the number of times, the number of incidents that some money may have been given. But the major corrupt deals that really undermine what we could do as a nation happens in the political circles, in the ministries, in the departments, in the agencies, at the presidency, and so on. And so until we get a leader who is honestly committed, I don't think that will go anywhere. It is a fact that, yes, we all have a role and responsibility. The one who takes the 1 cedi is equally corrupt. The one who takes 5 cedis is equally corrupt. But I'm a leader in an organization. If I were corrupt or if I am corrupt, my people will be emboldened to also begin to cut corners. So it all begins with the leadership and ends with the leadership.
Let's take a look at some other items of concern, but some of them are in the papers, so we might as well get into them. Starting with the Daily Graphic. 10th anniversary of JEA Mills, Mills's demise. Asumdwe Park refurbished. Mills won't be forgotten. That's according to President Akufo-Addo. He also says the late president, in describing Kwaku Anyidoho, who was there right by his side, the late president's energetic communications director. But let me ask you, I've been reflecting. I don't know whether you've seen pictures of the bust. Some people have complained about the look of the bust. Others have also complained about what the bust looked like when the erstwhile administration put it up. Some say that was just shambolic. Some say it's better now, the bust that has been made, which was inaugurated on Sunday, but that they made the former president's look like a schoolboy. I mean, you see so many things because of the shape of the shirt he is donning. But I have a fundamental problem. You look at this bust, and let me just get the photo and just read from there. So the actual bust has this written on it. This was unveiled by His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana, and assisted by Samuel Kwaku Anyidoho, founder and CEO at a Mills Institute. Sunday, July the 24th, 2022, to God Almighty be the glory. I mean, if you were a tourist, come to Ghana, and looking at this, how do you even know whom the bust was talking about? There's nothing about Atta Mills here. Of course, if you went to the actual burial place and the plaque and everything, yes, you would see that. But people have been questioning, and this is just a reflection of what people have been saying. You look at the bust, were we glorifying the former president, whom we've all praised as the Asumdwe Hene, or were we glorifying a political party, or maybe Kwaku Anyidoho, or I don't know what your reflection is on this, because it beats me. It appears the man himself has been relegated to the background.
Well, I think what has happened is a classical reflection of the acts of hypocrisy that has engulfed our country. So, first of all, you look at the bust as you talk about, and my expectation would be not to be reading who commissioned it, but who this person is. So it starts with, this was commissioned, and what is this? You expect me to look at the monument or the figure and be able to know who that is or what that is. And then what we see is an emboldened name of the president and I mean the current president, and then an emboldened name of Kwaku Anyidoho, who now claims to be the son of President Mills and the one who loves President Mills the most.
In fact, there's been a bit of a tussle in terms of the Atta Mills Center or Institute. He has given recognition there as founder and CEO Atta Mills Institute. I guess that cements it, doesn't it?
I think that it is fine for anyone who admires a leader to want to establish an institute in honor of that person. That is fine. We can all do that. If I admire Kwame Nkrumah and I decide to set up a Kwame Nkrumah Institute and run it, I think that is fine. It's all about the way it is being done. And the fact that, look, you cannot take away Atta Mills from the family. And I've heard about the family complain about the fact that they were not consulted and so on and so forth. I think what the MPP government is engaged in and what the president is engaging in is highly hypocritical. There's no, Atta Mills was...
What is hypocritical about it, though? They have refurbished the Asumdwe Park. They have undertaken work that has seen the renovation of the tombstone, the erection of a bust, the redesign of the park, the construction of an ICT laboratory, a library, an artifacts building, the construction of a concrete shed, the replacement of an alcohol bond, the construction of a fence wall, and restrooms. It also includes the construction of an entrance for the public and VIPs, the paving of the 50-meter walkway to and around the tomb, the laying of porcelain tiles, very expensive, and the landscaping of the area. All of this was done in hypocrisy, and when the former president even speaks glowingly about former President Mills, who at a point he vilified. He speaks glowingly about him, his classmate, and all of that. Is all of that in hypocrisy?
Absolutely. It's not about what was done, the beauty of what has been done, the aesthetics, and so on and so forth. It is the spirit behind it. And I'm saying that, look, nobody can take away the fact that Mills was a leader of a political party and became the president of the republic. Imagine President Akufo-Addo being no more, and of course we would all one day pass on. So this is not to wish any doom for the family and for Ghana. I'm just using a hypothetical situation. Imagine President Akufo-Addo passing on, and at one time the NDC in government acting as if, they love President Akufo-Addo more than even his family or the political party that he belonged to. It is fine for the state, for the nation, to want to do things to honor and glorify our past leaders. But if you end up doing it in such a way that you want to take either political capital of it, and of course that is reflected in the inscription on the monument, as we talked about earlier, where you have who commissioned it and who assisted the commissioner being, boldly engraved on it, than even presenting who that person is. Briefly, I would want to read, this tomb of His Excellency President Atta Mills, President of the Republic, from this to that, born on this to that, was commissioned by this person. This is the first time I am seeing an inscription of who commissioned a certain facility and who assisted. We all go around the country and we see this, building was commissioned by His Excellency, This building was commissioned by Honorable this and that. It is the first time I'm seeing, the assistant.
So basically, you're saying that political points were meant to be scored from this bit. But let me read this portion of what Mr. President said, and then ask you what you think about it, whether you still feel the presidency is being hypocritical, and whether, like some have suggested, you toe the line that Koku Anyidoho, former aide to Atta Mills, is now being used. Of course, he's been expelled from his own party, is now being used as a hatchet man. Note that. I want your reaction to it. But reacting to everything, President Akufo-Addo on the day said his decision to have the Asumdue Park refurbished was backed by an open and clean mind. He says, quote, "I did so with that objective solely in mind, and not to exploit or take advantage of any so-called divisions in the political party to which he," that is Professor Mills, "belonged. Those alleged divisions are not of my making and do not in any way inure to my benefit." I don't know about not inuring to his benefit, but your thoughts?
For the president to even make these comments is clear that he knew what he was doing. Talking about Koku Anyidoho, yes, he speaks his mind, and based on his actions and conduct, the political party that he used to belong to says they've expelled him. We know, based on his statements and all of that, now he says things that clearly undermine the party that he once belonged to. He says things that are clearly aimed at undermining, the former leader of the political party, John Dramani Mahama. And obviously, I've heard him on a number of occasions say, look, I trust and believe that President Akufo-Addo will renovate the Asumdue Park to the glory of blah, 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 and so on. So the president is fully aware of all this. And when he talks about the division, he knows that he is exploiting that division. I wouldn't be bothered because I don't really care about whether MPP or NDC is being advantaged here or there, because invariably they are the same in terms of corruption and in terms of looting the resources of the state. They've proven to be the same. But for me, what's important is the values that Professor Mills represented. I think Professor Mills was somebody who was honest, very sincere, and patriotic. And for me, that is what is critical. It's not about what you do in his memory. I would want to see President Akufo-Addo uphold those same values in terms of protecting the resources of the state, rather than presiding over dubious contracts that take away resources of the state into people's pockets.
So just to conclude on this, you do agree that Kufuor Anyidaho, like some have suggested on social media, is being used as a hatchet man. You agree?
Well, he's put himself in a way that allows that to happen.
Okay.
Whether it is something that he realizes or not, I don't know. But he puts himself in a situation that allows him to be used for purposes of political exploitation.
Let's look at this. Of course, we also had former President Mahama together with his running mate in the last election, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, at the same premises, also doing their own thing later on. And according to the former president, John Dramani Mahama, Professor Mills brought the best to the economy. He also quotes how under his presidency, that is the presidency of Atta Mills, the biggest contribution to our GDP growth was the non-oil sector. Of course, we've seen how that has spiraled within the last number of years. But let's quickly move, even as we talk about these matters, a very important matter to our national life. Finance Minister presents mid-year budget review today, and we're going to go hard on that in the course of the show. But Minister of Finance Ken Ofori-Atta will appear before Parliament today to lay before the House the mid-year budgetary review of the economic policy of the government and supplementary estimates of the 2022 fiscal year. Today's presentation, pursuant to the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921, will see the Minister provide information on how revenue and expenditure had performed in the first half of the year, the country's current budget deficit figures, and projections for the next 6 months. Additionally, Mr. Ofori-Atta is expected to give an update on the e-levy and how much it has accrued so far, as well as provide some updates on what savings had so far been made from expenditure cuts from the emoluments of government officials, including the reduction of fuel consumption, the slashing of salaries by 30%, among others. He is also expected, crucial point, let me just add this, Sule. He is also expected to announce measures to shore up the gross international reserves, which the Bank of Ghana puts at 7.68 billion. Mind you, recently we heard from the chairman of the Finance Committee of Parliament that it was around 3 billion. And then they came back and said, oh no, it was a mistake. We'll hear from him on that. As of the end of June this year, this covers just about 3.38 months of import cover. So, Suleimana, your quick take on these, the mid-year budgetary review, and maybe you could add, people are still calling for the head of Ken Ofori-Atta, saying he should resign. Kwadwo Mpienu has said something. Former General Secretary of the NPP, his name just skips me. I think maybe you could help me. He has also said, saying, I don't know what your thinking is. Quick thoughts.
Well, first of all, just briefly on the presence of former President Mahama and his entourage at Atta Mills' barrier site. Again, for me, it makes the whole thing look a bit problematic, having the president go at one point, the former president go at another point. But as I said, in terms of what
Is
President
it not because, for example, there had been a statement by Koko Anyido, I had listened to him live on radio, say that the former president and the brother, in fact, brothers of former President Atta Mills should not even dare set foot there. So there was some non-alignment as far as the two sides were concerned. Maybe to avoid anything, they were not going to be at the same, premises at the same time.
Well, I really don't know what Koko is talking about. That is absolute nonsense to say that, because as a citizen of this country, I should be able to right now decide that I'm going to visit that facility unless it is not open to the public. We all go to the Nkrumah Mausoleum, and we visit other places in other places of the world, and we visit the sites of former leaders and all of that. So that for me was absolute nonsense to say the least. But the point I wanted to make is that President Mohammed's comment about Atta Mills' contribution to GDP and managing the economy so well is a fact. But the question to ask is, what then happened after the demise of Mills, after 3.5 years of his leadership, when President Mohammed, took over? What happened? Why couldn't he do what Mills did? And eventually had to take us to the IMF, as we are currently experiencing, and all the challenges that we had. And I believe it was because Mills, as I said, was very honest, very candid, very patriotic, and committed to protecting the public purse. And when he died with those things. And invariably, the public purse now became open to abuse under President Mohammed. For me, what is important is for all of us to cherish the values that President Mills represented,
right?
And by that, and that for me is very fundamental. Now, to Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta and the presentation of the mid-year budget today, right. I'm really surprised that we still have Mr. Ofori-Atta as our finance minister for our country. I've gotten to the stage where I wouldn't trust anything that Ken Ofori-Atta says. This is the man who said a while ago that we'll never go to IMF.
But you do admit that the buck stops with the president. I mean, it was out of his hands. Maybe as finance minister, he felt, no, that's not the way to go. But when Mr. President, his appointer, says, let's go that way, Ken Ofori-Atta can do nothing about that.
Well, that was a PR gimmick, to say that the president has authorized. Because, if I were a communications advisor to the government, it was obvious that it was going to be terrible to not put it that way, because the finance minister had just months ago insisted that there was no way we were going to go to the IMF. We are a proud country. We have the resources. And just a few months down the line, we go to the IMF as if now we are not a proud country. We don't have the resources anymore. And it couldn't have taken just those limited time for us to have realized that, look, the IMF is the way to go. So I don't think that the finance minister at this stage has any credibility. Okay. I don't think he has any sort of public trust. And it is catastrophic to have a situation where your finance minister cannot be trusted. He says one thing and it is the other. We are told by the finance committee that it was the minister who indicated that our gross international reserves had reduced to 3-point-something million. And then a week or so later...
Billion, actually.
A billion, sorry. A week or so later, we are told, oh, that was an error. It's actually 7-point-whatever billion. So, if we are managing an economy where figures are just thrown out there, sometimes to create a certain impression from what the reality is, then we are in trouble. And unfortunately, the president still keeps this same person as his finance minister. But I'm not surprised, because we have a president who, for 1 year, has an acting gender minister because the substantive gender minister is chilling away in America. And the president is fine with it.
Right.
So,
let's just stay with the economy very briefly so we can move on to other papers as well. But Economy Times, just a quick reflection on this, maybe in some 30 seconds. Rise in public debt slows, records 393 billion Ghana cedis for first 6 months. That's the rise in Ghana's total public debt, which has slowed to 393.4 billion or 54.4 billion Ghana cedis. That is American dollars, representing 78.3% of GDP. Then there is Bank of Ghana hopeful of CD rebound. But guess what? Fitch Solutions revises Ghana's growth rate downwards. And this is the reality. Fitch Solutions has further revised Ghana's GDP growth rate to a 2.6% in 2022 from its earlier forecast of 4.8%. That's a 2.2 percentage point decrement. This is far lower than the projections by the IMF of 5.2% and the World Bank of 5%. And the research arm of ratings agency Fitch is attributing this to the rising inflationary rate, currency weakness, the Russian-Ukraine war, among other factors. Quick reflection on that, maybe in some 30 seconds.
Well, again, ideally, you would want to believe figures that are put out by your own state agencies, your central bank, and your finance ministry. Unfortunately, as I have said, we have a situation where they've proven themselves to be people who put out figures that you cannot believe. They make projections that are not credible or deliberately not backed by any figures. And so sometimes you are tempted to believe whatever these international agencies put out there. Talking about the decrease in the slowness or whatever, Ghana's rising debt slows down. Perhaps it's becoming interesting because what I'm used to is maybe the rate at which inflation is rising, slowing down. But in terms of how much debt we are accumulating, slowing down, it's perhaps the first time I'm hearing it. What would have been exciting would be that our debt is reducing rather than we celebrating the rate at which our debt is growing. What it means is that, yes, debt is still growing, but instead of growing at a certain pace, it has now slowed down. Unfortunately, we are swallowed by debt, and I don't know how and when we're going to be able to get out of it. Again, it comes down to how the economy is being managed and having the right people to manage the economy.
I'll focus on two main stories from the papers, three major papers I'm about to put out there, but I just want to read the headlines. So, Republic Press, Swami artisans justify Chairman Sabonsu's attack. You're familiar with that story. Ghanaian male public servants prefer sex to cash bribes. Then Western Region, police arrest 3 suspects of a murder of lady in Sifi, Bekwai. There's also GES boss shakes in his boots. Republic Press. Daily Guide newspaper. Don't align cost to free SHS. That's Child Rights International. And it's replicated in the Ghanaian Times. Don't charge students under free SHS. It will make it a failed policy. That is Mr. Bright Appiah of the Child Rights International. There's also GHS, Ghana Health Service, strategizes to contain Marburg disease. I want you to reflect, Suleimana, on the charge of Mr. Bright Appiah, who has been saying, once you start charging parents and students, you failed with free SHS. So don't align cost to it. And then the bit about the education, a GES boss, Professor Kwesi Opoku-Amankwah, recently supposedly saying that, look, we are reviewing this to ensure that parents can pay something where possible. And then there's a sharp rebuttal from the Ministry of Education. Quick reaction. Let's stay on the educational front and then we shall wrap it up.
Well, Ben, I've been a teacher before. I'm a trained teacher. And I've taught for 4 years professionally. And when it comes to education, it's something that I'm really, really passionate about. When I read the statement by the GES Director General, I was quite elated. And I thought that, well, this may be a reflection of what the thinking is in government. But I was also mindful of the fact that the free SHS policy appears to be a personal project of the president, just as the National Cathedral is. And therefore, it's something that is really untouchable. So I wasn't surprised when a day later I saw a lengthy statement by the same GES Director General explaining away his earlier comments. For me, the reality is it's not about whether a policy has failed or a policy has been successful or the president likes it or dislikes it. The starting point is the quality of education for our kids. And of course, they can afford to send their kids to all the international school to do the Cambridge, whatever curriculum, and take them outside the country. But the rest of us who have our kids in the normal stream should be concerned about what is happening into our education system. And I believe that the free SHS, in the way it is being run, it's certainly not sustainable. And that is why we are having the compromises that is resulting in the quality issues.
Right.
And going forward, the earlier something is done about it, the better. You cannot run an education system without the input of parents. You cannot run an education system without headmasters and head teachers and teachers.
So fundamentally, I mean, you disagree with Bright Appear?
Absolutely. I don't think that it is about the process of President Akufo-Addo's policy.
Right.
It is about the quality of education in this country that matters.
Fair point. Fair point. Thank you so much, Sulemana Brima. I would have asked you about this, but our time has run out. Of course, yesterday, the Black Galaxies defeated the Young Squirrels of Benin by 3-0. Fantastic performance by our lads. We'll be telling you more about that in sports, but maybe next time I engage you, I'll be looking forward to your prospects. Sulemana Brima, thank you so much for joining us.
Grateful and have a great week.
Right. So sports is next, and we give you that dose. We'll be telling you about the 4x100 relay in Oregon, where we placed 5th, setting a new national record. And of course, the Black Galaxies doing us proud against the Young Squirrels of Benin. All of that and more to come in sports. Stay.